everyone, I'm Tamron Hall. The News Nation is following breaking news in the murder case against George Zimmerman. Preparations are underway right now for the hearing that will determine whether Zimmerman will get bond in the Trayvon Martin shooting. Now, that hearing is set for 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. It will, by the way, be the first time that the new judge will be overseeing this case. His name is Kenneth Lester. Meanwhile, Trayvon Martin's parents are in Tampa right now taking part in a panel discussion on that controversial stand your ground law that Zimmerman may use as his defense. Now, this comes as Florida Governor Rick Scott names the 15 members he's chosen for a task force to study possible changes to the law. NBC's Carrie Sanders joins me live from Sanford, Florida, where there was just a meeting in the judge's chambers. Carrie, what can you tell us about that meeting?
Well, the judge did not put it on the docket. However, he contacted the defense attorney, Mark O'Mara, and he contacted the special prosecutor's office, who phoned in. Mark O'Mara went inside up in the courthouse behind me on the 5th floor in the judge's chambers. I don't know the specifics of what happened there on the record, but when the defense attorney, Mark O'Mara, exited from what was a meeting of about 20 minutes or maybe even less, he said that they were working out some of the procedures for tomorrow, discussing what they are going to do in terms of potentially who they might call to the stand. Now, you might be scratching your head saying, call somebody to the stand. Didn't this case just result in an arrest a few days ago? It's because there is the possibility in this bond hearing that the state will oppose the release of George Zimmerman. And in Florida, that would trigger something called an Arthur hearing, which means that the defense could ask the state to put on sort of a mini trial, call to the stand their witnesses and their evidence, and basically not only show the defense their hands, but also show the strength of their case. And so they're working out that potential of what could happen tomorrow, naming some of those witnesses and determining for some security concerns where those people will be and how they'll be called in. It is possible that they will not ask for an Arthur hearing because the state may not oppose George Zimmerman's release on bond. But we don't really know what's going to happen until it gets underway tomorrow at 9 o'clock. One other thing that I thought was interesting is that defense attorney Mark O'Mara did ask the judge for permission for his client to attend to this hearing in civilian clothes rather than the jumpsuit that somebody wears, as he currently wears here in the jail. The general sense of that is because the attorney says he's not guilty of anything, he's not been convicted of anything. I'd like him to be presented to the public as any other person would be. Tamron? All
right, Carrie Sanders live for us. Thank you, Carrie. Now let me bring in former U.S. Attorney for the state of Florida, Kendall Coffey. Kendall, let me start with the last thing that Carrie noted of interest, that George Zimmerman's attorney would like to have him in regular civilian clothes and not the orange jumpsuit. Is that a bizarre request or something that you would often hear?
No, that's a very sensible request. You may remember the notorious case involving the murder of Lacey Peterson, her unborn son. One of the first things Mark Garagos, when he got in the case, is had his client clean up, got him out of the jumpsuit so that he would start to appearing more human in front of the eyes of the public.
So that is a standard question in a high-profile case, especially where you have cameras following every detail here.
In a high-profile case where the eyes of the nation are watching, you don't want your client to look any more like a criminal than perhaps he already does in the minds of some.
Right. Let's get to what would likely happen tomorrow in this bond hearing. We know again that the judge met with the attorneys in his chambers, but what is likely happening behind the scenes to get this decided on tomorrow?
Well, two things may be going on. The first may be that the state and the defense are trying to work out some agreement for what would allow George Zimmerman to be released pre-trial. Remember, Florida has a very, very heavy presumption in favor of pre-trial release, even in cases where the crime of murder is charged. It's not an easy thing for the state to keep somebody locked up prior to trial due to the presumption of innocence. At the same time, both state and defense, assuming they don't have any agreement, are gearing up for what is a very, very important day in court tomorrow.
And we also heard Carrie mention this Arthur hearing where if the state decides to challenge and not have Zimmerman released, we would perhaps see more details regarding the evidence in this case than we were prepared to see, perhaps because many people thought this would come down the line.
Exactly, and it's a distinct feature in Florida. An Arthur hearing is required by the Florida Constitution, not something that you may have in any of the other states. And what the state has to do in order to keep George Zimmerman locked up, unless he's a flight risk or a danger of others to the community, is they would have to demonstrate not only probable cause, but well beyond that, Tamron. They'd have to put together evidence in perhaps executive summary form that says that George Zimmerman is guilty of the crime of second-degree murder, and that their showing is so strong it's even higher than the standard for conviction, which, as we know, is the standard of showing guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Very, very high standard that the state would have to meet tomorrow if they want to keep George Zimmerman locked up.
And Kendall, because of the attention with this case, obviously the Zimmerman family and George Zimmerman's attorneys have expressed concern regarding his safety. Would there be likely any guidelines set aside, any security, anything unprecedented to, if his life is being threatened, to protect and make sure that he's able to go on to court and have a fair trial?
That's exactly the issue, Tamron, especially if the state and the defense might be thinking of working something out. How do you get one of the most controversial defendants in America right now released in a way that's safe? What they would look for, I would speculate, would be some form of home detention in some place that is hopefully safely removed from potential distractions, extreme community pressures. At the same time, as you know from other cases you've covered, ankle bracelets, lots of very exacting conditions. If that is put together, I think there would be a reasonable way to assure his presence at trial and at the same time protect his rights to a presumption of innocence.
And Kendall, knowing what you know, do you believe he's likely to be released on bail or bond tomorrow?
If I'm a betting man, I'm saying that he is likely not to be locked up the rest of the way, that some very demanding set of conditions could be the likely outcome tomorrow.
All right, Kendall Coffey, thank you very much.